like to call the Monday, March meeting to order of the Wyoming Board of Education. May I have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Broderick?
Here.
Mr. Feldmeyer?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Here.
Mr. G?
Here.
Mrs. Zoller?
Yes, here. Thank you. Would you all please join me in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
May I have a motion to adopt the agenda unless someone wants to discuss otherwise? So moved. May I have a roll call?
Mr. Feldmeyer?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. G?
Yes.
Mrs. Zoller?
Yes.
Mrs. Broderick?
Yeah. Okay, now we have come to setting up an executive session. May I have a motion to go to executive session to consider the employment of a public employee?
So moved. Second.
May I have a roll call?
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. G?
Yes.
Mrs. Zoller?
Yes.
Mrs. Broderick?
Yes.
Mr. Feldmeyer?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Zoe Taylor, please speak.
Hi, good evening, school board members. I'm Zoe Taylor, a sixth grader at Wyoming Middle School and a member of the Wyoming Middle School Drama Club. I'm here to tell you the importance of the theater department for me and and how it can continue operating as well for future kids in the drama club. When I'm at theater, it is a safe space for me. I always feel welcomed and I get to do something I love in a judgment-free environment. I'm not the only one that feels this way. I know for a fact, the amount of work our director, Nancy Huey, and our co-volunteer director, Roswitha Wise, put in is tremendous. They make our middle school production something more and something special. The care they have for all of us is transparent. I know Miss Wise came to the school board last month to explain her departure and request a part-time paying position for whoever takes her place. Miss Wise and Miss Huey have tried to find someone to do everything Miss Wise does, but it has proven almost impossible to find a parent volunteer with the same amount of skills and time. The things Miss Wise does range from set building to costume making to sound booth, and with all of this, she has never missed a single rehearsal. I encourage you to continue investing in the drama department and fund this part-time position. To help you consider this, I gathered 12 students from the theater department to write letters on how important theater is to them. Once again, thank you and have a good night.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
And put the letter in.
Absolutely. We will make sure we see them. Thank you. I appreciate that. All right, the next name is Joe Brinkman.
Hi there, Joe Brinkman, live on North Park Avenue, got two girls in the schools here. I'm here to talk about primary facilities planning. There's a lot of great discussions happening on Facebook. I don't know if you've seen any of that. Multiple different viewpoints. I found one comment from Joe Cooper that I feel really summarized what's going on there. And I'm just going to paraphrase it. It seems as though the powers that be don't want to answer questions in large group settings for fear they may not have the appropriate answers expected this far along in the process. The information that has been filtered to the voters of this potential levy has been poor. During the forums, we looked at sad pictures and listened to colorful commentary about everything the schools are lacking. The architect explained the lack of appropriate space at each school through sketches, adding a blue box at each school, showing the additional interior space needed, but no real life renderings on schools on paper. Who knows where 700 elementary school students will learn for 2 years during construction, because we haven't seemed to figure that out yet. We've also heard how little a $68 million levy costs each homeowner. We've also heard very little information differentiating white versus blue. There was no real data or mention of schools that have gone through this process of introducing grade banding. We all agree that we need new facilities. The only dispute right now is which plan is better for all kids and why. We sat for an hour listening to why we need new schools instead of learning key differences between white and blue and the impact of each on education. Whoever creates the agendas for these forums is doing a poor job. It's sad to say, but the lack of transparency from the school board has jeopardized a levy from passing for maybe the first time ever in Wyoming. I've heard people say, you should take some time to talk to teachers to better understand their needs. I would say that we attend these forums hoping for that information. It would be great to hear from teachers explaining the advantages they see in one versus the other, rather than a postcard with check marks next to vague ideas and opinions. There seems to be no consensus on banding versus K-4 amongst teachers. At this rate, we will have a partially informed population voting on a levy, when we should be excited about coming together in the fall to build 3 of the new great schools for all kids in Wyoming.
All right, thank you. All right. The next thing on our list is a special presentation from the CIC. And I'll let you all, I'm gonna let them do their introductions because they've got great ones. Give us a chance to move here. It certainly did get.
Oh, you want to sit up here or?
No.
Did you have a? As long as somebody's.
Yeah, I think, Tim's
Tim was
driving.
So yes, you'll have to, just give me
Yeah.
there's no AI me today.
All natural intelligence. Great, thank you. So we are the CAC Artificial Intelligence Study Committee, and while our names are up here, I thought we'd have a little bit of fun with AI and do a little bit of AI generated images, superhero versions of all of us. So we have Wyoming parents and committee members, Kelly Churchwright, Dave Menninger, Nathan Lee. Linda Adams is joining us as a committee member as well. She's the Wyoming Media Center Media Specialist. I'm also a Wyoming parent and I'm acting as the committee chair. And then we had Tim Weber, another Wyoming parent, as our superintendent, of course, and committee advisor.
Isn't it obvious?
Just a little taste of how badly AI can butcher all of us. So what were our study objectives? We wanted to look at a handful of things. In particular, what are the best practices in using artificial intelligence in the educational program for students? How can AI be utilized by educators to support students in the learning process? How can students use artificial intelligence to support their learning in ethical ways? And what are the negative aspects of AI that we need to avoid? We also had a few topics that we gave a little bit of additional consideration to. Those were personalized learning, educational equity, and teacher empowerment. For our methodology and research, so by way of background, I've actually been a data scientist for the last 17 years. I currently lead the generative AI enablement at an AI company called Data Robot. And so I was asked to give a little bit of background on this, which I did, and we had a really lively discussion about that. And from there, we broke into our work streams, which comprised 4: educational applications and best practices, risk assessment, policy and governance review, teacher, staff, and student engagement, and long-term strategy and communication. And as far as our strategies go, how do we approach the work? Some of us attended some AI professional conferences, held interviews with our school districts. We explored AI as a tool within the study, which you've already seen, right? But we also used things like ChatGPT to help with summarizing some things and doing some brainstorming. We did a review of professional publications covering the topic. And then we also found this analysis, performed an analysis of this Teach AI Guidance for Schools toolkit, which is a really convenient kind of professional packaging by this consortium of a lot of the salient issues for schools. So what is artificial intelligence, right? It's a very vague term thrown around a lot. I actually like this particular working definition. It's very simple and straightforward, but it's a machine's ability to perform the cognitive functions we usually associate with human minds. What does that mean? Well, computers have always been able to crunch numbers at a scale and speed that far surpasses what humans can do. But recently, machines have also been able to now generate high quality images, text and code in mere seconds or minutes, work that would often take a human days, weeks, or months to complete. And there are a lot of players in the space. So the landscape comprises just some of the big names that you may have heard of. That's listed as growing daily. But we have OpenAI, which is responsible for ChatGPT and the GPT family of large language models. We have Google and its Gemini family of models, Meta and the Llama family of models. These are actually open source. The previous two were proprietary. NVIDIA actually has some models of their own, but they're primarily known for their GPUs, right? You probably hear a lot about that, and that actually drives some geopolitical action for us in the world. Amazon, no surprise there. They have a service called Bedrock, a company called Anthropic, which is responsible for something called the Claude family. And then last but not least, Midjourney, which does a nice image generation. Actually, that generated most of the images that we had earlier. And last but not least, company I work for, Data Robots, a little plug there. Okay, so what did we find out? Well, we found out 3 really important things to know today. First and foremost is that this is the fastest technology in history to reach 100 million users. We literally have hundreds of millions of people and organizations using this right now. Just to put that into context, it took 192 months. It's about 17 years for mobile phones to amass 100 million users. The internet took 84 months. All right, it's about 70 years. Facebook hit it in just 54 months. Not to be outdone, ChatGPT did that in 2 months. So yeah, so it's here now. The second thing that's good to know is that computers and people excel at different things. Humans excel at emotional, social, and creative tasks. Computers excel at repetitive and predictive tasks. Recent advances have and will continue to blur the lines between the kinds of tasks best suited for computers versus best suited for humans. But the ceiling of what's possible, right, for the totality of humanity will continue to be defined by the effective combination of these 2 things. Now, applied AI can be divided into 2 kinds, predictive and generative AI. Both are necessary to realize the full benefits of AI. I won't go into a lot of detail about the differences between these, other than to say that generative is the much newer one on the scene, right? It's what's kind of capturing all the headlines, but predictive still comprises about 95% of all the use cases you ever see in AI today. It's very much more behind the scenes, but it's very impactful. With that, I'll pass it over to Nate.
All right, very good, thanks. Right, hi, everybody. So I wanted to talk about how AI can be used in a school for learning. And then I'm going to talk about how it can be used in teaching and in administration. So in terms of learning, it's something that a lot of us have already experienced, using AI as sort of a search engine to get answers. And we can think of AI as a way to quote unquote cheat, or as a fast path of arriving at an answer. And that's a great concern when it comes to learning and its application by students. But we can also think of AI in its capacity to be an augmentation to learning in the classroom. So I'd like you to think about the difference between a textbook and a reference book. 2 books, both containing information. The purpose of a textbook is to be a learning tool. It's there to guide along a learning path. And while it does have answers in it, it's teaching how to arrive at answers, how to use reasoning and skills to get the answers. And the knowledge within it is simply a tool along that path. Whereas a reference book, its purpose is to quickly arrive at authoritative information. An encyclopedia, a dictionary, doesn't spend much time teaching you how to use it. It is there to give you the answer as quickly as possible. Both are a way to use AI as well. So here's an approach to thinking of AI as an augmentation in the classroom. And the graph that I have up here is a chart that's taken out of a study called the 2 Sigma problem. This was a published study in 1984 by Benjamin S. Bloom, and it looked at the advantages of applying one-to-one learning within the classroom using a tutor model, and compared that with conventional classroom learning. So the graph shows achievement scores on the left to right, and the up and down is how many students were achieving those scores. So we can see that the conventional learning, pretty long flat bell curve, and then we can see mastery learning, which has more adaptive testing and more adaptive learning with the same student to teacher sizes, achieving better. So by having a learning style that adapts to the needs of the students and then adapts the lesson plans, rather than just a conventional classroom where the same thing is being taught no matter what the students need, does lead to some improvement. But if we look at what happens when students have a tutor working with them one-on-one, teaching them and adapting to their needs on a point-by-point basis, their achievement skyrockets. And you can see here the lowest achievers with the one-to-one model are right around the median of those getting conventional education. Of course, you're a school board, you know that we can't afford one-to-one tutors for every single student in the classroom. But we can start to ask ourselves, how close can we get by using the right tools? The right tools that can be delivered through AI. So this is something that was brought up by Sal Khan, founder of the Khan Academy, pretty famous online learning platform. So please head to this next slide and play the video and full screen it if you don't mind. And he's talking about this same study.
Well, he said, well, this is all good, but how do you actually scale group instruction this way? How do you actually give it to everyone in an economic way? What I'm about to show you is, I think, the first moves towards doing that. Obviously, we've been trying to approximate it in some way at Khan Academy for over a decade now, but I think we're at the cusp of accelerating it dramatically. I'm going to show you the early stages of what our AI, which we call Khanmigo, what it can now do, and maybe a little bit of where it is actually going. So this right over here is a traditional exercise that you or many of your children might have seen on Khan Academy. But what's new is that little bot thing at the right. And we'll start by seeing one of the very important safeguards, which is the conversation is recorded and viewable by your teacher. It's moderated actually by a second AI. And also, it does not tell you the answer. It is not a cheating tool. Notice, when the student says, tell me the answer, it says, I'm your tutor. What do you think is the next step for solving the problem? Now, if the student makes a mistake, and this will surprise people who think large language models are not good at mathematics, notice not only does it notice the mistake, it asks the student to explain their reasoning, but it's actually doing what I would say not just even an average tutor would do, but an excellent tutor would do. It's able to divine what is probably the misconception in that student's mind, that they probably didn't use the distributive properly. Remember, we need to distribute the -2 to both the 9 and the 2m inside of the parentheses. This, to me, is a very, very, very big deal, and it's not just in math.
Just one short example of using a tool as a tutor instead of a simple look up and give the answer to me tool. So this is the same basic technology that's used in chat.
Well, this is all good, but how do you actually scale group?
This is the same basic technology that we have in ChatGPT, but it's adapted, it's used in a way that's suited for students. And we'll head to the next slide. We can also look at applications for AI tools in teaching. So there are tools that are available enabling teachers to have differentiated lesson planning based on what it is that they're trying to teach. They can tell the AI tool what they are teaching, tell them they need a lesson plan at a 3rd grade level, and the AI tool will help generate worksheets, help generate a lesson plan by day, help generate quizzes or checkpoints. And then that teacher who's putting together the lesson plan knows that they've got a few students who need a little bit more to chew on. So right after that, they can say, now give me one for a 4th grade level. Same lesson plan, but given at a different level, virtually instantly. Research guides, creative prompts for art, for creative writing, activity creation, coming up with your quiz sheets and your activity sheets, and even developing entire lesson plans. And then those letters home to parents and students, to the parents about the students, we can have those generated by an AI tool and instantly presented to the teacher for proofreading, and they can skip the difficult part of putting out the letter and get to the real meat of it. And then what's really great about using some of these tools is we can address some of the access needs that we have. So if we've got some families that do not speak English as a first language, or maybe not at all, it's incredibly simple to ask the AI to generate the same classroom communication in a different language, have it spit it out, and we instantly have communication that reaches every family. Same for administration. We can generate and adapt the communication to the community. We can create classroom calendars. This has a big application in scheduling for the complex schedules that have to be put together at the high school level. And even the boring stuff like inventory, building maintenance schedules, what staff needs to be where and when, and all that stuff that is the reality of serving administration. So with that, we will head on to the next, is it Kelly?
Yeah.
All right.
Right,
Feel free
thank
to
you.
scroll down there.
Awesome. Appreciate that. All right, so there are risks and rewards here, naturally. We identified a whole bunch of places have identified a number of risks involved in this. We grouped them here into 4 categories. So first would be fairness and bias, because this generated content can unintentionally, probably unintentionally, reflect the biases of those who have created those models, the developers of those models. And this is all, of course, continuing to develop, so that can change from what it is now to what it might be. And we need to be ready for that. Second is intellectual property. So the data used for the training and outputs generated by these models can run into legal issues, and we should be aware of that in any kind of policy that is being developed about that. Third is privacy. There's a risk, of course, of personal information leaking into model outputs, and that should be something that we keep in mind for all potential usage of AI, from students to teachers to board members, etc. Then there's security, right? So malicious actors can use generative AI to bolster cyber attacks. I noticed today that Sinclair has put out a free, this is completely unvetted, I don't know anything further about this because I just saw the headline. Sinclair has put out a course, a free course for school boards about cyber attack stuff, just so you have that in mind. I don't even know if AI is involved in it. Just so you have that. So reliability and explainability 2 here, or 5 actually on the slide. In large language models, sometimes they hallucinate. So they might create stuff that doesn't really exist when you're asking certain prompts. And we need to be aware of those kinds of things, those sorts of things that teachers and students might run into, and try to help people prevent that from happening. And last, there's social, and I'm sure this isn't really the last one, but lastly, social and environmental issues. We have to consider those things that might crop up that we might not know about, right? So we think about cyberbullying, we think about other kinds of social environmental impacts, even the carbon footprint, etc. Big takeaways here are there are definitely risks involved in this, but we also don't know what they all are. So we need to stay on top of this as it continues to develop really quickly. But most important probably is that we need to be able to train our students to be ready for this when they enter the workforce. All right, next slide. Great, so balancing risk and reward is probably the main theme that we encountered through all of our discussions about this. And there's a lot coming out on that at this point. There are huge resources available from the feds through the state. All kinds of levels are putting out toolkits for this. Husted, I think, put his out in January. So there's a large website at the state of Ohio that you can go to for all kinds of suggestions about how policy should be made. That you should definitely consider a resource, in addition to the various nonprofits and other sorts of things. There are links in the slide, if you want to take advantage of that later on. Okay, next slide. All right, so clearly current policies are not going to be covering this. Even if your policies are from the fall, they wouldn't really be covering necessarily where we are at this point. So I think in short, our message might be don't panic, but don't do nothing. You must do something about this to be proactive and be ready to change as things develop, because this is going super fast. I'm gonna leave it there. Make sure we didn't go over.
So another theme of our findings is this idea of AI literacy, which is analogous to, say, financial literacy or media literacy, understanding what AI is, what the motives are of those that are creating AI tools, and not just in students. We think that the district should encourage AI literacy across all the stakeholders, including policymakers, teachers, students, and even the community. Policymakers, for example, might be able to mitigate risks from data privacy threats to over-reliance on automation. Teachers, as we saw, there are plenty of uses. Teachers ought to be able to lead discussions on AI, ethical and social impacts, including what as Kelly mentioned. Students ought to be more likely to critically assess AI-generated content and discern between reliable outputs and potential misinformation. And just a general computational thinking, which is, understanding that there are these computational systems all around us and they have effects on our lives, and having some familiarity with, where these large software packages come from and what they're for, and all the issues around them. So, yeah, to repeat, another finding is that just keeping everyone that's involved knowledgeable on the topic. Linda has the next one. Oops.
Thank you, Dave. So long-term strategy. In our research, we found a lot of guides and articles and things giving us information about where to go from here. So one thing that was agreed on in all of the cases is that the integration needs to be a comprehensive approach. We need to be updated on the AI advancements, ongoing training, engagement strategy, and have a clear communication with all the stakeholders on how we're proceeding. One of the frameworks proposed by Teach AI that you heard is they have 3 different stages. The first stage is guidance and policy. That would be creating a policy to address the immediate risk so that AI does not undermine the learning during the school year. Stage 2 is the organizational learning, making small but strategic investments in harnessing the individual learning of many educators that are excited about AI. We've already experienced the excitement that the teachers are having over at the middle school anyway. Stage 3, improvement and transformation. Identify areas for improvement and effective transformations with potential to scale to support the educational system. Other frameworks exist, and the Wyoming City School District can look at those also to draw in more as much information. This was just one of the first ones that we came across that we thought was very important to grasp. So the end of the findings for community and the stakeholders or engagement, the research emphasizes the importance. 3 things: internal implementation team. So have a team set up that can also work with the ongoing updates, engage other districts, other stakeholders, adopt AI into the education platform here successfully. And I'll turn it back over to Chad to finish up.
Okay, so we've got four conclusions, four recommendations for Wyoming City Schools. The first is an integration and policy update. So begin integrating AI opportunities into current practices and establish protocols for continuous review and response to new AI technologies. Hopefully, we make it pretty clear this is all moving very fast. But this includes creating a standalone responsible use policy and updating existing policies to reflect the new technological landscape. Promote AI literacy. This is one of my favorite ones. Integrate AI literacy as a fundamental component of professional development for teachers and the educational curriculum for students to prepare them for AI's ethical, societal, and practical aspects. This stuff is only going to become more and more integrated into our society, and kids need to learn how to make the most of it. Let's use existing resources. So adopt the AI guidance for schools toolkit developed by Teach AI as a blueprint for AI adoption and policy adaptation, ensuring the integration of best practices and comprehensive guidance tools. Now, as Linda pointed out, there are many frameworks out there. We did actually particularly like the AI guidance for schools toolkit by Teach AI. Finally, establish an AI review board. So form a standing committee to oversee AI developments comprising teachers, administrators, parents, students, and other stakeholders to provide ongoing recommendations and ensure the representation of key stakeholder perspectives. This is particularly important given the speed at which these technologies are moving, right? And the degree to which they are going to become more and more enmeshed into our society. It would really benefit, I think, the school as a whole to have a standing committee of folks who can kind of be keeping an eye on this, right? And then reporting back to you all. All right, that's it. We actually, I believe, have the report printed. We have print copies of it.
Yes, this is great.
I provided the report. Right?
Yeah.
This is just a.
Yeah, there's a report as well.
Yeah.
About 2 pages that summarize this stuff, and then we've got about 17 that
Yeah.
gives all of our sources.
We came through with our agenda preparation.
Okay, terrific,
Yeah.
terrific.
Yeah.
And that's our presentation.
Well, thank you very much.
Any questions for us?
Yes, questions?
I just want to say like it's a comment first, but just like it's helpful because we know it's coming quickly. Like it was this quick onset, it's like, you know, it's here, right? You even just did the chat, you can be like the first night, I feel like it was there. So just to hear like the ways that we could be utilizing it for good, I think it's helpful just to kind of start to wrap my brain around, and to get practical ways to do that. For me, it's just like a helpful thing that I need to digest, but it's not a question.
No, thank you for the comment. No, thank you.
I see locally any kind of professional development for teachers and resources.
Linda went to a great opportunity. Yeah, I don't know if you want to speak to
Yes,
that.
Forward Edge, who we are contracted with, has a series of trainings. Actually, my last one is coming up in April. And that has been extremely important to go to. He has introduced so much new. This is a drop in the bucket compared to what we can use. Now, what I was able to do with that was connect with our Forward Edge person, who then, Emily, who then has gone out and she is working with our teachers. And so every time we have a professional development, she sets up a lesson and they come in, and they're coming in droves because they want to know, because they know that they need to know.
Right.
So yeah, but yes, we've already kind of started that, and we've already got it on action. It's happening. So yes.
And when that happens in-house, part of it is focused on the benefits of the tools that we might be learning from that individual, but also, how to safeguard against potential pitfalls and what risks there are. And mostly at that level, it's about privacy. Let's, you just need to be careful about that. But yeah,
And also,
very
I
useful.
mean, like, I love that a lot of your presentation was risk reward. There are clearly rewards that we're all excited about. But as we learn with Facebook and every kind of new thing that's come on, there's some major it can be a downside and further challenge to our ability to discern what's real and what's not. So
As Tracy mentioned though, our kindergartners through our seniors, as soon as they leave, they're gonna need to know AI,
Yeah.
because their jobs are gonna be AI. And they're gonna have to know it when they get there. There was a teacher that was here that was talking about her daughter applying to a college, and AI was involved in that. She needed to put in information that had to do with AI, and she was, you know, a little bit like, oh, what do I do? But our job is to get them there.
Yeah, and while there are definitely risks, right, we would characterize the risks as it's not too fundamentally different from the same kind of risks that we saw on the internet. Right.
Right.
Now,
Yes.
there are some additional overlays to that, the ability to essentially do things like that at scale. And for a bad actor, it can be a very powerful tool, right? But companies, including my own, right, we're actually actively working on these problems, and they are improving as we go. There's a whole technique for kind of constraining these things to only draw from certain courses, right? And that can be brought to bear. You're gonna see that technology improve a lot this coming year.
Is that kind of technology that you're using in business, is that adaptable to education?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a very general kind of approach.
Because we've used it in simpler models when we were just dealing with research on the internet, but, this is all encompassing.
Yeah, I would say that the school's, best tools are the policy tools that you have available, to update and kind of set some constraints in place, just like when the internet showed up.
And also, I almost feel a little overwhelmed when you're thinking about the part where I'll give the example, because students can use it lots of different ways. Teachers can use it to do their lesson plans and do this and do that. And at some point, there's somebody up here in, AI world who's thought of everything. And how do we balance like helping our teachers and then students stay creative and thinking, rather than having Google, let's ask Google. Google knows all, I don't have to think too hard through something. But
Well, I like your example, right, with a teacher in the loop, right? As we said in the presentation, kind of humans plus AI is what's going to define the ceiling of what's possible, right? These are only going to augment human creativity. Now, yes, of course, people could have used them just like they could with calculators, right?
True.
But again, when you've got a teacher in the loop, a teacher's going to have the common sense and the background and the training to know, okay, what the AI is giving me here is useful. This maybe not so much, just like when they're doing research on the internet. With students, there'll have to be some policies put in place, right? You may have to use an AI to potentially detect some creative form of plagiarism, because that is a little bit harder now than it used to be. But I do think the tools are in place to help you guys start moving towards that direction.
And also those vetting tools, we've had things, shown in a classroom that seemed real, but in part, maybe it was, but on more careful vetting, it was like, oh, well, maybe this is propaganda for XYZ that, is, we need some training in helping just, teachers even discern, there's such an overwhelming amount of material. That, I guess there are lots of jobs out there for people to organize this, but.
It will be increasingly difficult to kind of discern real from fake and much of the stuff, right? Which is where healthy skepticism, good critical thinking, the kinds of things that we've been teaching kids for time immemorial, right? Like that's where that's going to become very important. They're going to just have to learn that with these tools, I mean, there are actually certain tells. I can break one of these things in about 30 seconds and tell very quickly, like that it's going wrong. But that's because I've been working with it for 17 years, right? I have a graduate degree in it. So, but the point is that you can train people, you can get people to a point with far less training than I've had to detect these things.
A couple comments and a couple questions. So first of all, I'm very excited to hear you leaning in about how the benefits benefit us versus just discussing the risks. It's, we can sit and say fear, like we want to avoid, it's not healthy, it's not going to be good. And like you said, we've gone through transformational, things like this before. Let's understand how to leverage it. Even with the job dynamic, like talk about social and environmental, how do we train people in the new things so we don't have another generation of people feel disaffected and left behind as with the auto industry, blah, blah, blah.
So I appreciate you were leaning into the positive on that. I also was very excited about what you represented relative to teachers being able to design lesson plans and learning plans. We were talking earlier about teachers meeting kids where they are. And when you got 30 of them and 10 of them aren't in the center, that could be more challenging. And there's so much time in the day. And so how much that gets done, more of it can get done if this is leveraged to do, this thing well. I'm very excited about that.
Yeah.
I was curious in your recommendations, which of the ones of these is recommending how we do the testing and piloting and the learning so that a year from now, more of our teachers are using these tools effectively in those kinds of ways?
So that kind of detail is out of scope for how we approach this, right? We don't have an actual recommendation for here's how you should go execute and implement this stuff, right? Like, we do think you need to get a board, right? That can, it's not an easy problem, right? It's not just here's a thing to go to. You're gonna have to try some things, see what happens, iterate, right? What we did see, some school systems having success with is to find the people, and they're already using it, right? To start drawing on what they're doing and learning from their successes and their early wins. This is very early days. Like, this is what would happen if we had reached like 1998, but in like 1970, right? Like on like day, well, that still would have been like 20 years after the internet was invented, but you get my point, right? Like, we just kind of run really fast all of a sudden to this new point. So it's all very new, right? Like, you're just gonna have to try a bunch of things and be very diligent about like saying, okay, did that work? Why did that work? Let's spread what's working and then let's eliminate what's not. So again, that's kind of the importance of the AI review board, so my short answer is it's number 4. That's the implementation answer.
Yeah, and it's gonna be different for different school districts, right? It's gonna be different for different populations. It's gonna be different for how comfortable your teachers already feel versus how quickly they might be able to adapt given curricular constraints or curricular freedom, right? All those things are gonna play in. It's not so late in the process that you can't have pilot projects of various kinds. There are lots of ways to approach it, but that's, out of immediate scope.
Yeah, it's a great point. Like, we're particularly in universities, right? We're seeing that a lot of universities are adopting a policy where, the professor is responsible for how they're using it, their own policies for it. Now, that may be a little too loosey-goosey for, this level, but you get the idea, right?
I think, Linda, just to touch base on that one too, Linda, you mentioned Forward Edge, and we contract with Forward Edge, and we have an instructional coach for Forward Edge who works with our teachers. We have talked with her about future goals for next year, and knowing that this CAC study was going to be coming, to wrap around this CAC study and start to build that team. And we know that we have her as an instructional coach in the district. And so that would be a support in utilizing her knowledge and skill set to develop a team to talk about AI as a goal next year.
And one more question.
Oh, yeah.
The beginning was gonna be a little complicated. It's about equity and thinking through 18 years from now, right? So in the beginning of the internet, you had to have a computer to access it, and that was the case. Certain families or economic dynamics were more advantaged. Now that it's in your phone, pretty ubiquitous and accessible. As you think about how the internet is monetized over time, it's still free, for us to get on the internet. But as you think about AI, ChatGPT is available, et cetera. What's the way that this is going to be monetized, as it develops, given your experience in the category? And how do we ensure that we preserve the equity, in our case, for students, to have access to the benefits of it once we define how we bring benefit?
That's a fantastic question. So how it's going to be monetized is definitely still developing, right? My conjecture, based on what I'm seeing, is that you're just going to see kind of a lot of companies capitalizing on their particular knowledge bases, right? To stand up AIs with a particular type of expertise, right? You're going to see those crop up everywhere. How do you allow students to have equal access? There is a night and day difference between ChatGPT 4 and ChatGPT 3.5. It is completely different beast. These models are going to continue to be commoditized, but the best ones are going to be at the top. I've seen literally hundreds of use cases at this point in the last year, and they all kind of have a very similar flavor, which is use the best AI model that you possibly can, set up a vector database around it so you have a corpus of knowledge that it's drawing upon, and then put monitoring AI around it to flag things for you, right? You're gonna have to find a way to give kids access to the best models, right? It's $20 a month, by the way. Today, every single kid for $20 could have access to that best language model. And then you're gonna have to set up some kind of safeguards, internally in the school. Because kids today there are definitely some kids that probably already have it for $20 a month, and there's kids that may be out of reach for them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that was a big topic in the group study.
And I think we've seen it, the difference between the verbal and the wonderful pictures that you use was, there's a cost.
We just went through sixth grade research, third quarter, and some of those kids already have it and they wanted to use it. And so, we had to kind of tamp that down a little bit, but in one place where we did use it, and you were talking about some equity, had a young man who decided his topic was going to be Napoleon. And it was a big topic for this student. We have to have an essential question and 3 guiding questions. I'm sitting there going, oh my gosh, Napoleon. Okay. So we pulled it up on ChatGPT and put that in as a prompt. And what we got was pretty elaborate, but he and I were able to sit and create 3 guiding questions and then an essential question. And he owned that along with me. And he didn't feel like he was lost, so it worked very well. And we did a couple of other ones too after that one worked, and we went and found some of those other tougher topics, and it worked very well. So.
And that's a great example of where the human and the computer piece work together, and that'll be key, I think, going forward. So if you keep that theme, it'll help, I think, guide you in the right direction. I'll just give one more example of something I ran into a couple of weeks ago in a different district, where some intervention specialists were using ChatGPT or whatever it was. It's not that, it's actually one that's for IEPs. They were using AI to generate parts of an IEP, which on the one hand is not exactly the way an IEP might be intended under the law, since it's supposed to be individualized. On the other hand, it could also benefit folks in writing stronger goals, right, on an IEP, but you still have to make sure it's individualized. So there are all those pieces there where on the one hand, it could help you with prompts and phrases, but on the other hand, you can't just be writing the same stuff in every other place.
Right.
I have 7 more, but I'm.
I know. Glad you can have enough. I know, it'll be a lot.
So free to hit me up anytime. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Job well done, and I appreciate the time you put in.
I made that up. I probably got it. Like, it just came up. I don't know. Yeah. So, what now? Nothing, I was saying, for a second, I was thinking we had it in our property meeting, and I think that was.
Right, all right. All right, thank you. We're gonna go on in our agenda. The next thing is our policy review. And once more, we're working our way through the board-oriented bylaws. Would you like to take over?
Yeah, well, it's a hard act to follow, I tried to get AI.
Interesting.
No,
To somebody.
I tried to get AI to do this for me, but not happy.
0149, yes.
And I was going from 0149 through 0157. First one, 0149 is access to records. It lets us all know that as individuals of the board, we don't have the full power of the entire board, but to the extent we need documents or information for the performance of our jobs or duties, that we can have access to those. But they are subject to the policies of the board, of course, state and local law as well. In terms of personnel records, again, those are really supposed to be used specifically for us to fulfill our primary responsibilities and making decisions as board members of our enterprise of the board. Access to records. Thoughts, questions, motions to
Nope.
adjourn.
Yep, keep going.
All right, 0151 organizational meeting, as we've all experienced, we have an annual organizational meeting that's supposed to be held 15 days, within the first 15 days of January, set by our treasurer. And then we shall, at that meeting, appoint a president pro tem for that meeting in order to do some things we'll talk about in the next few items.
Correct.
0152, at that organizational meeting, we appoint some officers. So that's the title of this segment. Essentially that this president pro tem acts in that role, and we appoint a president and a vice president, and the treasurer will administer an oath, and then the president will take it from there. There's some procedures here in terms of how the vote might be processed, should there be a split vote of some kind, and how we would go through different rounds of voting. The officers serve for 1 year once elected, and that's our section 0152 officers. 0153, we're talking about appointees at the same organizational meeting we've been discussing. The board shall also appoint a member to serve the Ohio School Boards Association annual conference, another to be an alternate. We shall appoint a legislative liaison to the Ohio School Boards Association, a general legal advisor, and a designee to attend public record access training required for board members. 4 big categories of additional appointments.
Which we do.
And we do it. 0154, motions, same organizational meeting, each January, we will adopt a budget for the succeeding fiscal year. Designate a newspaper, published in the district. I could
We
my
might
own
wanna
questions about
update.
that.
Yeah, we might have to put that in.
That needs some cleaning.
Yeah, I mean, we use, normally in the law, it always talks about a newspaper of general circulation. That's always the term. We've always used the Cincinnati Enquirer for all of our legal postings. But I would probably not done that in an A+ way, to designate that newspaper at the organizational meeting.
Can you even
I
find?
don't know what other newspaper there would be.
Well, can you find them in the inquiry even?
Well, they're all online now.
Yeah,
I mean,
I know,
I
but
think
the
newspaper is
online
the word.
version is different. I mean, the Cincinnati.com and the Cincinnati Enquirer tend to be different.
We'll have to
We'll
look
put that
at,
on the list.
yeah, and also
I
we'll have to
think we
look
do
at
need to rethink.
revised code section 7.12, because there may be some
Mhm.
umbrella requirements that we have to work within.
Yeah.
With respect to what constitutes a newspaper.
Right.
Beyond the newspaper, we've got to designate days, times, and places for regular meetings. Will be held at least once every 2 months, and we do them once every month at least. In terms of additional items, we establish a regular method for where a person may determine the time, place of our regular meetings. And then determine a fee charged to individuals requesting copies for the schedule of meetings or agenda. I don't think we charge for copies at this point, but
Only if someone requires that they get the actual hard copy. Normally everyone, if they want something, they want it scanned.
okay.
So we don't charge for that.
Yeah. We're gonna designate a day for regular informal work sessions, which we do typically once a month. We can join the Ohio School Boards Association, which we've done. First, purchase liability insurance for the board members and secure performance bonds for the superintendent treasurer.
Again, as just a point of clarity, the performance bonds are in alignment with our contracts and not done at the organizational meeting, so we just might want to clean up that language.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
A tweak of,
Again, anytime it says the board shall,
I
means that's really happening,
yeah,
but that's not the way that the law works in terms of the requirements for our bonds. So
Right.
they're-
So we-
they're in
We
alignment.
are doing it.
We are
But
doing
that
it.
it's.
Yeah.
right,
Yeah,
it's
the
just
timing
in-
is
it's
not at
added
the
to contract.
organizational
Yes.
meeting. Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll clean that up too.
yeah, I think we might be able to remove it. There's no revised code section listed there. Okay.
So we'll take a look at those two things.
And then we've got 0155 committees. Committees of the board members shall, when specifically charged to do so by the board, conduct studies, make recommendations to the board in active advisory capacity. But they are not permitted to take action on behalf of the board. It says whenever a majority of a committee or subcommittee meets for any prearranged discussion of public business, that committee or subcommittee shall abide by the Sunshine Law of Ohio. And that includes giving public notice of each meeting, preparing minutes for the meeting and making them available. As we know, the committees, the subcommittees or committees of the board shall not have more than 2 board members on them. Of course, that has to deal with quorum issues. Members are appointed by the president, and the president shall appoint at the organizational meeting the members of the board to the standing committees, which we have realigned our schedule, I think, with respect to those appointments.
Yeah, we might want to
Yes,
adjust
I
the
think-
timing of that, because we do it now in August to align
We
with our
do it
school
in
year.
August, not at the organizational meeting, but we do then renew it at the organizational
Right.
meeting. There probably needs some
Yeah.
kind of verbiage that needs to be,
Language.
Little leaking of
just to make
sorts.
it, it's not a change in the actual policy, just a change in the process.
Sure. And lastly, we've got 0157, appointment to joint vocational school district boards. And so with respect to the Great Oaks Joint Vocational School District, the board is entitled to have representation on that Board of Education, and we can appoint a member to participate that. I'm very fortunate to have designees and delegates for that serve generally for 3 years in a term of office. This provision also lays out some qualifications of board appointed board members. You can't be a current member of that board. They have to be appointed through appropriate policy of our school board. So, questions about that one?
Remember, we have, I think she is in her second of her 3-year term, and I exchanged an email not so very long ago asking you for questions. She'll be with us next month. Next month. Yes. So we'll bring ourselves up to date with our participation with the Great Oaks. All right, thank you. I appreciate it. I think we will be looking a little bit at the committees, because we did kind of change some committees around. We have added more, so we may be, I don't think we'll be changing the policy per se, but we may look at the how we're meeting all the needs.
Because, yeah, we were looking at having that as an agenda item for the planning meeting in April, just to look at best practices for committees, really, so that when we get to August.
Yeah.
And we're ready to set the new year up, we're ready to go in and out of it.
Thank you, sir. We're gonna go on to committee reports. The-
Incredibly well done.
Well, thank you.
Yes, and guess what? You're next in the alphabet.
AI, here you come.
Committee reports. The finance committee met this evening at 5:30, and Rhonda, if you would like to bring this up to date, we had an excellent discussion.
I'd be happy to. Finance Committee did meet earlier this evening. We had a few standing items. We reviewed our minutes and approved those. Every month we review the salary and benefit analytic. There were no variances to report. With 85% of our budget going to salaries and benefits, we do take a look at that analytic every time we meet, just to make sure if there's anything that is off track, that we have a discussion about it, nothing is off track. But we do still take a peek at it at every meeting. We had a quick conversation about spring settlements. Expect our property tax payment to be finalized during the month of April. Normally we get that in the month of March. Again, just stressing the importance of our cash balance policy. When revenue is delayed without an appropriate cash balance policy, then we don't get revenue on a timely basis, and that could impact our expenditure, our ability to make our expenditures, but we have a healthy cash balance policy. And so the timing of the spring settlement won't impact us. It should be maybe 2.5 weeks. Expect that around maybe the middle of April. Gave a little plug for Finance Friday. We are sharing bite-sized financial information through our principal newsletters, on all of our social media channels, Facebook. I think she puts them on Twitter and Instagram, I think. And then also they're in the finance district treasurer section of the website, where we just continue to share information and trying to just give people insight into all things Wyoming school finance. This past Friday was lined up with the anniversary of the Drops decision declaring school funding in Ohio unconstitutional. So we shared some some school finance data for Wyoming City Schools. So we talked about that. So stay tuned. We are taking this Friday off for Good Friday and Friday of spring break, but we will be back after the eclipse. So, yeah. So stay tuned for more Finance Friday. And then we spent the rest of our time talking about just future planning as we approach the May. It's almost time to adopt the May version of the 5-year forecast. And so, we're continuing to monitor our own cash balance again with an alignment with our cash balance policy. And so just, everybody hates to talk about the dreaded L word, but, levies are an inevitable part of any school funding environment. And so when we think about monitoring our cash balance and eyeing potential operating levy over the life of our 5-year forecast, of course, we're going to move through our primary facilities bond issue first, but right now our 5-year forecast does dictate a need for an operating levy towards the end. Towards the end of that, we are coming to the end of our levy cycle. Passed the levy last in 2012, and Ohio public schools can't live forever without them. And so, just a reminder of that. Looked at millage rates historically. Just kind of a refresher of what the levy cycle is, where we are in the levy cycle, what that looks like as we move towards, unfortunately, that time in finance. So more information will be shared as we move through the next few years. So share some pieces in Finance Friday, and certainly when we approve the 5-year forecast at both our May and November board meetings, we'll continue to have those conversations. All right, I think that's it.
Thanks for
Citizens Advisory, of course, we had that wonderful presentation this evening. The next one up is on food. And we'll be meeting after spring break.
After spring break, yeah.
We will be meeting, they will give their presentation to the group, and then you will get it at the April regular meeting.
Okay, well done for those of you still here.
Absolutely.
We talk about what a great resource the Citizens Advisory Committee is, and it, another great example of information that we can utilize right away.
Yes, part of the reason why I forgot the way it goes up to the point of sort of deciding, hey, this is what you should do. I was kind of curious, like, hey, like, what should we do? The value was evident and meaningful. I'm very excited about where to go with this.
Belonging Committee.
Okay, I'll share a few highlights. Our Belonging Committee did not meet. Our Belonging Inclusion Collaborative did. We met on March 5th. And it was an exciting conversation. We had an interview with Veronica Robinson, leader of ACES, and 2 of the students from ACES, and they just shared the highlights from the Black History Month Assembly at the high school. Really an engaging conversation. It was great to see the work that the group had done and the response that they had felt from the students and staff during that presentation. We then spent the rest of the time just thinking about how our Belonging and Inclusion Collaborative team can work next year, and to really organize our efforts to make sure that people have access to the learning that's happening within that group. And so we talked about 4 different components of our work together. Talked about having a discussion series, followed up with some communication that could be shared out in the buildings. And then also having a standing meeting each month with the representatives from NIC back in the building. So anyone could just pop in and hear about the conversation that was happening in that discussion series for that month. And then talked about some specific professional development opportunities that would be taken from that group across the district in our formal PD times that are set up.
Tim, I know you've told us before, but can you remind me how many people roughly are on the collaborative?
We'd say about 15, yeah. And so we have staff members from each of the buildings and community members that represent different ages of students in the one school district. Yep. And so just like CAC will be reaching out to the community for membership here soon. We're approaching spring break, so it won't be long before we'll make another ask, and we still want to make sure that we're having additional people come to join that group. And so that should be probably coming out April or May to let everyone know about the ask.
Great, thank you. Community engagement. There's, you're gonna have to do.
No, I have it.
Oh, that's not the entire list. Uh-oh, well, do you wanna talk about, the school foundation fundraiser that just happened? I wasn't able to attend, and I know some of you did. That's just
Extremely well
happened
done.
On
I
the
just,
23rd, which
top-
is supposed to be.
Top drawer this past Saturday night, Wyoming School Foundation hosted a blue, white and brackets party where they kind of embraced the March Madness of it all, had big screen TVs. I think I even saw some college wrestling going on as well. So lot of exposure to sports, just a great time. Tim, I know you served as a kind of a co-MC of sorts and just kept things moving.
That is not my skill set, but they were fabulous. They did it was a ton of fun. And so, you know, I spoke just a little bit to this great combination of celebrating and supporting our students and our staff with the greatness of March Madness. You can't get a better combination for, you know, for people who love March Madness. But it was a lot of fun. You know, people were excited about the options, and we had a special fund and need where we were talking about a technology resource very similar to what you have behind you, this interactive display board where we're talking about outfitting our middle school to match that resource that in our high school and in our primary schools right now. But just a great celebration of Wyoming, and just really appreciate the foundation for what they do.
They've done great.
And the people who are in the organizational structure, but so many people have connections to the work that they do that it just spreads out across our whole community. So it's very exciting.
One of mine is just singing out, I know I'm the PSA rep, but with that, really, it's kind of like I go to the beginning, meeting, the end, but Tim's really the representative at all those other meetings, but I just try to stay connected with some of the partners, but it feels far away, but Mayfay is obviously something the community loves, but obviously is also something people always need help with. So the PSA keeps promoting just where they have a need, opportunities for volunteering, if you will, so people could check that out. If we want that to continue happening for the community. Maybe volunteer to make it happen. So always grateful to them as well for what they do. And really the rest is probably, do you want to do the whole list of stuff?
I'm gonna do it thematically. I'm gonna do it a little different than Susie does it. But as Rhonda mentioned, spring break is coming upon us, right? Thursday is our last day of school, Thursday, the 28th before spring break. And then staff will return on the 8th for professional development day, but students will not be, but everyone has their solar eclipse glasses and should be able to participate that. We received those during report cards. So in addition to spring break, we're kind of gearing up for next year already. It's crazy to think that it's April. So, this Thursday, actually, at 6:30, excuse me, not Thursday, but tomorrow, Tuesday, our 4th grade parent meeting in Wyoming Middle School is at 6:30 so that our 4th graders get to enter a new foray in a new building. And then also after spring break, Saturday, April 13th, and then finishing up on Tuesday, April 16th, we have kindergarten welcome days. So our youngest learners coming in and really transitioning and meeting our primary staff. And I know that Dr. Hill and Dr. Kirshner have really worked with our staff to make that a special event and really have a touch point with each family, which is really exciting. Then it's also theater times of year. The Wyoming High School will be presenting All My Sons at 7 p.m. on April 11th through the 13th in the Pendry. And then the middle school is closely following up with Willy Wonka Jr. At 7 p.m. on Friday and Saturday, April 19th and 20th, and then also a Sunday matinee at 2 on the 21st. And then last but not least, busy times at the high school. On April 18th, the Wyoming High School is having their college counseling office is going to host an online college admissions panel for sophomores and juniors to kind of just learn about that process. And then Saturday, April 20th is the junior and senior prom in Sharonville. At the Delta Hotels by Marriott. And then the very next day, in case prom wasn't exciting enough, we have PSA Willathon that will take place on Sunday, April 21st at 1 o'clock. So lots of wonderful opportunities for spring right before spring break and right after we return from spring break.
Right, thank you. On the middle school kind of day for parents, I was talking, we do the open houses, the school board members are asked to show up and sort of welcome people and be helpful or whatever. Is that something that happens with that or no?
It normally does not. It's more kind of informational. Not saying that you're not welcome for sure, but normally it's more informational. Parents get some just about the schedule and kind of some nuts and bolts. It's for a good time to just kind of like wander the building and get a little feel. But open house is where they kind of get that guidance and get that meet and greet with teachers per se.
Right, thank you.
Yeah. Always welcome. Always welcome. Always welcome. Optional. Optional.
All right, the facility committee.
I just thought I would share some of the big next steps in our process to create a plan for the future of our primary schools. As you know, the statistically representative survey is happening now. That should all be wrapped up by the time we come back from spring break. And that's a big initiative. And so we're excited to open up and see the results from that. And so what we've done is we've set up an April 11th Board of Education special meeting. You all know that. We'll make sure that we've got that out there. That is at 6 p.m. on April 11th. I believe it's a Thursday. Yes. And so that we will be able to hear the results of that survey. And soon after that, my plan is to pull our steering committee together and based on that information then determine what the next steps are. I think what we'll be doing is and talking about is preparing for a third community forum to talk about the direction that hopefully that information will be able to provide to us. So those are probably
Is there
the
a
big
meeting on
ideas.
the 10th?
Yes, we're talking about a meeting with the steering committee on the 10th. I will reach back out to them.
Okay.
Just because I want to make sure that I have access to the information. And so I'm just trying to figure out when I'll be able to have that. And it might be the board meeting that's
Oh,
that-
so
that's the first on the 11th, right? So we'll see. I'm still trying to figure out those pieces, yeah, but we talked about it a meeting before.
Thank you. Planning and goal setting. We did meet, we talked about the facilities, that brought everybody up to date.
Yeah, we talked about those dates.
And we especially keyed in on those key dates.
And the other thing we actually talked about a little bit here, we talked about the committee structure and then having an agenda item at that April planning meeting to talk about best practices in committee structures and committee meetings. And so again, that'll come back up at that April planning meeting.
And policy review, may I skip and because you're about to talk a little bit here. Student achievement.
We have a DLT meeting scheduled for March 27th. We did meet earlier, and we were, was it on the 5th? Yeah, we were talking about, we wanted to talk about the goals that were beginning to be established at that point in time. And so we're pulling back together on the 27th, and that will be to look at some more finalized goals at the district level for next year. And again, that will inform buildings as they begin to pull together after spring break to determine the goals and actions that are specific to the needs of each building.
So those are general, the full district, okay.
Yeah, and we'll also be talking about at that BLT meeting, we'll be talking about conference structures, again, trying to identify best practices for these things and be in alignment across the district. So we're going to be talking about conferences and what that look like, how can we set a plan that really supports K-12. We talk about the partnership. So that would be a topic, and then we'll be talking about the 25-26 district calendar. And trying to put that together.
Okay. The conferences would go back to a discussion that actually started in negotiations last year. And to improve our
How can we be better at developing partnerships and
getting
supporting
more
kids at different points in the
connection
day?
between parents and
Yes.
teachers.
But that part was great too. I think just the conversations with that of like it is different for K-4 maybe versus 5-8 versus high school, like timelines and manner in which you're doing it and kind of the needs. It's been good conversations.
Right, thank you very much. All right, thank you. We are ready for a Board of Education report, and the first item is the spring policies.
Yes, so normally we end up doing like a back and forth trade-off. I'm actually gonna cover the first 4 of them this time, and Heather's gonna cover the last 5. The last 5 are connected to transportation, so there's more similar kind of elements there.
Okay.
Instead of trading off and distracting. I'm just gonna do it that way. I do the short straw with my family, so I had to drive to St. Louis on Thursday. Didn't get to go to the blue, white, and brackets. I was sitting in a Starbucks parking lot, like feeding off their Wi-Fi because they wouldn't let people come into the store in Effingham, Illinois, while I was on our policy meeting. So on my phone. So as we kind of talk through the policies, I was listening. I'm gonna do the first 4 of these, and then Tim also has a call, Ashley and others. So questions will team work that. The first one, student assessment and academic intervention services. Some of the new content here at the bottom of the first page talks about the requirement for the superintendent developing a program, an overall program that includes this administration of state mandated tests, performance-based tests at the appropriate grade levels to measure achievement across composition, math, science, social studies, and reading, district or teacher-made achievement and performance tests, as well as tests of mental ability. So those were new components in that policy there. As you go into the second page, it talks a little bit about definition. So it talks about what an achievement test is, what an alternative assessment, what diagnostic assessment is. And then the new piece talks about end of course exams, striking out what they're described as graduation tests, being that the college and work ready assessments selected by the Department of Education workforce, they're aligned with academic content standards and model the curriculum, which is designed to measure the level of the student's academic achievement.
Was there discussion on when it says test of mental ability is a new component? What does that mean for every student? I did not get that. I don't think it was that either.
Mental ability can include gifted, it can include, testing for, additional testing for IEP. So all of those are under that component. It would not mean that we would test every kid. Those would be as needed on individual basis. Except in the gifted policy, when we have a gifted policy.
Adding something new, and I'm like.
It's to make sure that you have at least those delineated in your particular plan or process.
Yeah, I don't think that this changes our practice
No.
whatsoever.
Oh, okay, because
Okay.
Yeah.
Because that was my same
No.
question in terms of letter B, performance-based tests, and then it specified composition, mathematics, science, social studies, and reading.
This is really just bringing us up to speed with new graduation requirements, really. It's really the changing of language to mirror the new graduation requirements that were put in for the class of 2023 and beyond.
Okay,
Mhm.
all right, thank you.
Every now and then the state just changes up the language.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
And their rules, and then we have 14 policies that we have to change. Yeah, this doesn't change our
I
practice.
thought maybe there was some new test.
Mm-mm.
Nope,
Nope.
not at all.
That was a good one, because I feel like that felt like the heaviest one. It
Right.
felt like the, most weight of like how we are supporting our students.
Yes.
And a lot of it ended up being semantics, I
Mhm.
feel like, versus.
Composition tests.
But I was
Yeah.
gonna say, right,
Okay. All right. Thank you.
The middle bottom of the second page talks about communication of the results from state mandated assessments or tests administered by June 30th of each year.
Mhm.
And the second part talks about the way that that's communicated with confidential. Those were significant portions of that one. Additional questions on that or?
No.
Third grade reading guarantee. So some of the changes in the first paragraph, we're just talking about the way that it can be administered, just to create flexibility in terms of where the assessor or person that's reading, doing it live versus 2A video and some of that stuff. Assessment of the skills talks about this being grade 1 through 3 versus kindergarten through grade 3. Talks about some of the details on dates and whatnot. And then at the bottom, talks about just a clarification on the accepting the results of the kindergarten readiness assessment shall be submitted to the Department of Children and Youth. That's where those results are submitted.
The purpose of this policy really is to reflect the changes in the third grade reading guarantee. Those are kind of being phased out over a 3-year period. So I would anticipate you'll see this again in the fall because there's no longer the retention of children who do not meet the third grade reading guarantee threshold on its own. So this is continuing to iterate over the last 3 years that we've seen this. Mhm.
Nothing held back.
Correct.
Right. But I don't know, I read it as a more supportive.
Well, it's the midway point. So it used to be retention if you didn't meet it. Now there's you could be, but you don't have to be. We want to support you better. And then that retention completely will come off the table in the fall next year.
Okay.
That cannot be the sole factor of why a student is retained.
But the support was.
The support is there. Yeah,
Words.
exactly. That it'll be the support will be all that's left. The fear of retention or the possibility of retention will completely come off the table. Mhm.
Okay.
It's moving toward a more supportive, less punitive model.
Mhm.
Employment of substitutes, in the third paragraph, some clarification regarding the licensing requirements, highlighting that don't have a professional license, a substitute teaching license or pre-service teaching permit. Acceptable for substitute teachers.
Okay.
Then on health services, there is some content relative to concussion, this was highlighted to call that out relative to rules requirements for any head injuries experienced in gym or other, organized athletic activities and some things highlighted there. But then the bigger ad was around the provision of feminine hygiene products, saying that we shall provide access to free feminine hygiene products in all the school buildings, and that the district determines where those products are made available.
Did we not already do that?
We do.
Oh, we do.
Mhm. The district provides those. So not each building is responsible. The district provides those and then they're disseminated through the health services staff.
Available.
Thank you.
You're just making a requirement of the law for now. All right, 8600 transportation. A lot of it, honestly, you'll see in the transportation ones is a lot of semantic changes just from van to authorized vehicle is like a lot of the big changes that Norm was going through. And that had to be 9 passengers or less. So then they also just changed their vehicles other than school buses. You'll notice in a lot of these, it's changing out like he or she to students. A lot of these transportation ones are again changing of Department of Education to do. The biggest one, I think, right, was that travel times for the transportation of children with disabilities, that final paragraph. That there was a 30-minute rule. Am I getting that one correctly? That wasn't what I'm saying, that sometimes kids were getting transported, yes, to and from in certain places in the state, but dropped off way too soon or getting picked up way too late, and that there had to be better parameters about what that timeline was. Am I missing something big on that? Okay. But that's that biggest bit for that travel time, so that that's being considered, so that it covers and clarifies that transportation piece for them. Any questions before I move past that one? Okay. 8600.04. This one's really almost all, I mean, at least on that front. What I wrote to myself was changing to DEW and van changing to vehicle is a lot of that, at least on text on that. And then the same, if you'll see like on that second page, it's really just crossing off a lot of what we kind of had and rewording about the records check, about like the background checks and things that we already are doing for people who are transporting our kids. The BCII check, the employee presents the proof that they've been a resident of the state. It's rewording a lot of that. And yeah, I think that last page is really just the little semantics as well. 8640, transportation for non-routine trips. That one we really just had, we're nixing that line. Again, changing non-routine from field and other districts sponsored to crossing off like they're under B. The board will be informed of all extended field trips before they occur. We had a good conversation though, just about some of the stuff that we know is coming and that principals might know that trips are being planned. Let's say we're choosing Chicago trip as an example. You know, that's coming up every year. But then Rhonda had a great point too. There's so many kids, especially in high school, who might be part of
something and then you win and then all of a sudden you're going. So there's no way to always know ahead of time that you can get that 60 days. So we were really just talking about how does that work so you can give enough headway when you can. It has to be approved by the board. And sometimes there's just trips that are gonna happen because students are so engaged. And sometimes trips, you don't always know that extended trips are gonna happen, when they're gonna happen. So if that makes sense, that's why we kind of shifted that and reworked on the other side, for deep, like extended excursions outside.
Super fortunate that our kids have so much success and they win and they go, they win and they go, they win and they go. And sometimes that doesn't always correlate to our board meetings.
Right.
So we just had a practicality discussion
Yeah.
about
There
what
was
that
a
looks like.
too. So it wasn't a lot of changes, but it was practicality. And we also want to make sure that people who are planning it still plan it.
Right.
With enough time that we know that they have time to get it approved. Because I feel like we had that a few years, years ago.
Yeah.
That suddenly we're like, oh, that's everything done. Any questions on that one? Okay, then we're at 8650 transportation by vehicles other than school buses. So saying you'll just see a ton of van to vehicles being shifted. That's the majority of it. And when like this one is still just about like how they're getting inspected and when and why, but I think really almost all those changes are van to vehicle. And then other than school buses. And then 8660 incidental transportation of students by private vehicle. Let me just make that so I'm right. Fine tuning of the language again. Just changing, like making sure they're noting the correct board policy. And just changing like he and she to the person, adding that one was kind of.
This one where we had so much discussion around the efficiency of liability insurance. Was that one of the other?
That is, we did have a discussion on that. That's in AGs, I think, rather than policy.
Oh,
Yeah.
right, he's like,
Yeah.
on it. Oh, yeah. We can.
So you will be.
Yeah.
looking into that.
The amounts changed in the law.
Mhm.
Just because that's in old outdated amounts. The law had updated.
But that's it for first read policies.
Yes. All right, thank you. Well, we will have those available for perusal for 30 days and then act upon them at the April meeting. May I have a motion to approve the Board of Education report?
So moved.
And second. Roll call.
Mrs. G?
Yes.
Mrs. Dollar?
Yes.
Mrs. Broderick?
Yes.
Mr. Feldmeyer?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. The treasurer's report.
Thanks, Judy. Item A, approval of the minutes from the regular meeting on February 26th and the planning meeting of March 12th. Item B, approve the statement of revenues and expenditures for month end February 29th. Item C, accept with appreciation the list of donations, a number of those from the school foundation, so always thankful for their support. Item D, appropriation adjustments for the month of March, and item E, approval of the report, please.
May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second. We have a second, sorry. Roll call.
Mrs. Aller?
Yes.
Mrs. Broderick?
Yes.
Mr. Feldmeyer?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mrs. G?
Yes.
Thank you.
Superintendent?
Okay, several personnel items that I'm recommending. Number one is the resignation for the purpose of her retirement, and this is for Gina Robin. Congratulations to her on her upcoming retirement. This will happen at the end of the school year. She is an educational aide in our middle school, and she started in 2001, has been doing that great work for 23 years. And we are super excited for her and wish her the very best as she moves on to whatever comes next. So exciting. Number two is a recommendation to approve the substitute employer and payroll rates. And these are through the Center for Collaborative Solutions, which is through Hamilton County that we get our substitutes for. Actually, I don't know if you want to talk about the rates that are established here.
Part of the reason that you're seeing at this particular time of the year is Hamilton County Educational Services Center recently had an audit. And they asked us to basically start to board approve all of our substitute rates. We're doing that now for the 23-24 school year. However, we will do that at a more natural time for 24-25, which would be like in August. Just to kind of highlight a couple of things, our long-term substitute teacher pay, we actually changed this last year. You know, the starting rate for a daily sub is $90. However, those people who are with us long-term, they then have the ability to move up to $100. If we know that someone is going to be with us for a long-term from the start, we just kind of start them out at that rate. We don't make them go from the 90 to the 100, because we normally know about our long-term subs. So anybody that we know is going into a long-term sub situation, we start with that rate accordingly. The also one that you might have a question about is the long-term educational aid substitute. We normally do not have a lot of long-term educational aid substitutes. This one is particularly unique for this year in that we had a need, particularly at our primary. We found a sub that was a really good fit. We scaled that aid back a little bit, but then decided that that was still of a more robust need than what we had planned. So we brought that person back, and instead of starting over with a brand new sub and learning the culture all over again and the children, we just stayed with the same person at that particular rate. So that is a rate that is unique for this year that will not be there long term. And then the district building substitute at 150, that is a unique rate because they are the daily hole filler if we have them, and we frequently have them. And so basically every night or morning, I contact our district sub and they're paid a little bit more because of their flexibility there. In every classroom, it changes every day. They get their occurrence either at 9 o'clock at night or 6:15 in the morning whenever I text them. And sometimes that changes as the holes come in. So they are really kind of like an on-call sub. So that's why that rate looks a little bit different.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Number 3 is recommendation to approve these athletic supplemental contracts. These are all for spring sports. Number 4 is recommendation to approve these 2 athletic volunteers. Both of those are in our softball program. Number 5 is a recommendation to approve home instruction for those individuals to provide services to students in need. Number 6, recommendation to approve pay to this staff member for supervision provided for our choir students that were doing very, very well at the highest rating.
Across the board.
Yep. And number 7 is recommendation to approve payment to the staff member for the art of DJ work that will provide her the middle school band.
That's a nice little fee.
Yeah, that is a challenging.
That's incredibly challenging. In middle school, oh my God.
Yes. Okay, so shifting gears a little bit, we do have several camp proposals at that time of year. And so you can see several camps that are being recommended for your approval. Again, we have modified the process for doing this. And so this is the camp structure. Staffing will get approved at later meetings. Number 7 is a recommendation for an overnight field trip. This is our high school DECA group, speaking of competition. And so they continue on, and so they'll be going to California. Very exciting for this group. And then D is a recommendation to approve our new list of volunteers. And that list again is pretty tremendous. It's phenomenal.
All right, thank you. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
And I will second. May I have a roll call?
Mrs. Broderick?
Yes.
Mr. Feldmeyer?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mrs. Sheet?
Yes.
Mrs. Oliver?
Yes. Superintendent update.
Okay, it's getting late, but I still just want to throw one more plug in for our foundation. What I didn't mention, what I spoke of at the night of the blue, white brackets event, you know, at the time, you know, when I was thinking about it, we had 21 grants that surpassed the $23,000 mark. That number's not even accurate because those just keep coming in. And so the number of grants that have been awarded to the district continues to rise, and that dollar amount rises.
Wait, you're saying that there were 21 grants of 23,000 or more, or?
Yeah, 21 grants have been awarded to our district so far from the foundation total. And the total dollar amount of those grants goes above $23,000.
Oh,
Yeah.
gosh.
Yeah.
I was like,
Sorry. Make sure that's correct. No. So, and all of that. Oh, thanks.
Sorry.
I want to make sure that's corrected. But all of that goes toward opportunities, and that might be resources, that might be experiences that our students would not otherwise have. And so it's pretty phenomenal that we have people working behind the scenes to do great things for kids.
Outstanding. Thank you. I guess we're at the end here. All right. Unless someone has something else, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So,
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Feldmeyer,
Yes.
Mr. Thomas,
yes.
Mrs. G,
Yes.
Mrs. Oliver.
Yes.
Mrs. Rodriguez. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. We are adjourned.